Greetings and welcome back to another episode of 1320 Time Stream, where we're going to be talking about the Red Spectral Skywalker. This is going to be a fun one today. We're here on our wave spell. It's going to be the 11th day in our night wave spell, which is also the left hip, the hip or tone of liberation, release, dissolving. Where we're breaking down the walls and blockages, letting go of the things, whatever they are. Okay, so here's just a little blurb for you. And let's get into our smaller breath here for today. Okay, so the Skywalker is going to be located in your left ring finger. So your left ring finger is it's your left hand next to your baby finger, your left ring finger. And then the spectral tone, as we said earlier, is going to be your left hip. So your left ring finger and your left hip. Breathe out when you're ready. Okay, that's a good breath there. Let's move over to talking about it a little bit. Okay, so I find this is a fun one specifically because this is like the bridging point between the human and the wizard. And so while the while the last kind of red sign, which is the moon, also was abstract, we have the moon, which is kind of that pure emotion, is more the quickest ways that I can describe it. Then we go into more phenomenal, embodied kind of signs, like dog, the monkey, and the human. And then, boom, we come back to the next red seal. We are at the Skywalker. And then we're going to be going into the wizard, the eagle, and the warrior. And so the Skywalker, to me, is another one of those kind of, disembodied, less phenomenal. Like, it's not, I don't think phenomenal is the word, but less incarnate, maybe. That's a good way to really express that, is less incarnate, which is to say the Skywalker itself does not actually have a physical form, while the human does, the dog does, and the monkey does. Those are all three things that we know exist in bodies, physical bodies here on the earth. And so the Skywalker, it's interesting because the three kind of embodied frequencies that we come from here, we got the dog, the monkey, and the human, are all kind of going to transform into the wizard, the eagle, and the warrior, respectively. Right? And we'll get into the reasons for that as we actually touch those seals in a number of days here. But today, as far as the Skywalker, the thing I like about it is the Skywalker is also known as the wizard's journey, right? Or the human's journey. And it's essentially, in one way, you could consider it the journey of enlightenment. And the symbol, one of the ways I've always read it, is like the pillars of earth and the pillars of heaven. And so you have this kind of dual foundationalism. One is of the lower gravitational planes, and one is of the higher gravitational planes, or the higher planes of frequency, which is to say the vibration is lighter and more tuned. So while at the human level, we're looking at something that is potentially indulgent, it's an embodiment and an identification which is constantly checking into what am I? And so it's constantly dealing with influences. And the wizard, on the other hand, enchantment and timelessness, receptivity, it's far more attuned. The very nature of the wizard is about hyper embodiment. It's like this is specialization. This is, for lack of a better term, self-mastery. While the human is more of a casual, existential, cultural embodiment, the wizard is an embodiment of specialization. And the way it moves towards the eagle, and the eagle eventually moves towards the sun, the wizard is that humanly embodied step, an incarnate step, while still being human. Because then the next step is like the animal plane again. We're at the eagle, right? And so we're going up into those. It's still kind of a physical incarnation, but then we begin getting really abstract again. The warrior, the earth, the mirror, the storm, the sun. And so from there on in, we really begin to see a whole different thing, which again starts to become disincarnate. So the eagle is really the last phenomenally incarnate seal, representing a form of embodiment, but the embodiment of higher mind. And so that being the case, then the wizard is the first form of the embodiment of higher mind. And so what that does is that makes the Skywalker is the essence of discovering that higher mind. It's the journey from earth to heaven. Now, so we come into the spectral aspect of it. For me, this is very profound because the spectral aspect is about letting go. And so this is the Skywalker of trimming and tuning you, trimming off the edges. This is the Skywalker that is like the bonsai tree. Because the wizard is the goal, the cultivation. It is the upcoming frequency. And so this aspect of the Skywalker is like releasing and dissolving in order to explore the different nuances of the inner and outer spaces. And so I just really like how that works. I feel it's actually a really simple function, so much that it would actually be difficult for me to speak directly about its function, because I find that it's a transitional function and represents the stages in between embodiment. And so what we have here again is that the stepping stone, the journey, the becoming, the initiation of the human into the wizard. And so that can really be anything for anyone. Because these skill sets, while the 1320 system, the Zolkin, has a kind of unfolding on how we go towards the sun and the dragon and continue this kind of rotation. And the way I see it, and I believe many in the world see it, and it was kind of intended for, is that we're talking about world ascension, we're talking about planetary ascension. But I want to also put that aside, because in talking about the direct intent of a thing, we can sometimes get into expectation, and we can sometimes get into not really recognizing how this energy shows up for us, and that's what this is really all about. And so the wizard can very easily represent just personalized skill sets, like someone who, is working as, like, say, like a really complex engineer building, like, dome high-rises, like connected in the sky or something. And so there's only like maybe 3 of these engineers in the world. That would be kind of like on that wizard level. It's like, wow, that's insane level. They don't even teach that in college. You have to like be so intelligent and so dedicated to your engineering craft that you did learn through your, high-end universities or whatever, that you took it to the next level and you began evolving the structure of the teaching itself. And so in there is that phenomenology. If we take the regular university and the engineer, right here we have the human. And the Skywalker is the journey to creating it the Sky Dome engineer. And no, I didn't actually even realize that Skywalker, Sky Dome, but it's kind of funny how that just kind of fit in there. And so, just take a look at that, right? And so this is the different ways that we can recognize the wizard as the space holder for like specialized skill sets. Very much as the sun can be that as well. But I feel the wizard is a much more embodied form of that, because the sun represents itself as an abstract phenomenon, while the wizard is still representing physical embodiment mixed with the abstract phenomenon. So that being said, other aspects of the Skywalker that come up are prophecy. In the system, it's also known as the Seal of Prophecy, and so it's actually the main seal that actually reminds me of the Mayans the most, is the Skywalker, which is a sign 13. And I can't even really tell you why that is. I think it's because of its association with prophecy, Mayan prophecies, all this kind of stuff. I remember a story that I read in a book quite a while ago talking about a woman named Longreads. And the story had to do with her recognition of her past lives as a Mayan leader of some kind. And she was in kind of like conflict with these dark forces. There was these beings hunting her through the dimensions, and she had to go on a series of initiatory shamanic rites to be able to claim her soul, that the knowledge of who she was locked in many dimensions, and so she had to go through this initiatory journey. And so to me, that, you know, that kind of energy is really part of the Skywalker. But her name Longreads because the Skywalker is also the reed, the bamboo reed. And so the whole teaching that she was being taught about the long reeds was that she was being taught that her name meant that you can yield but you do not break. And so there's a power in passivity or patience that doesn't mean that you're defeated. That there's an ability to bend and then snap back to where you're supposed to be. And as the heavy winds come by or the heavy waters, those forces that resist you, that it is good to recognize the nature of the reed. And so this brings me to a different aspect of this, and it has to do with the kind of pipe effect of the bamboo reed or the flute. And so you have a connection with the Skywalker or the reed and a thing that moves the air. It could even be said to be your esophagus or like your trachea, in the throat area, right? And so there's a bunch of different kind of analogies around how the Skywalker, the reed, the wind, and all of these energies kind of play together. And so we also have the spectral tone, and so we're liberating some function of this to create a clear passageway for the wizardness to come about. So today is a really good day for checking into how that works for us. Okay, that feels good. Stay tuned for the affirmation.